And Trae, how are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining me in the Black Media Matter
I'm
Studios.
excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're glad that you are here. And this sounds like a phenomenal program just from what we've been sharing throughout the week. Tell us a little bit more about Jazz Ed. How did this start?
Yes, great question. So Jazz Ed was created about 10 years ago by our executive director, Lori DeCook, in partnership with some other parents from Garfield High School and Clarence Acox, who was the former jazz band director back in the day. And based on watching her own sons go through the music education program at the Seattle Public School District, she really quickly noticed that the further along they got in their music education pathway, the wider and more affluent those classrooms got. So she banded together with Clarence Acox and Robert Att to start the conversation, and Jazz Ed was created out of that to increase access to music education, specifically for Black and Brown youth, and to help them continue exploring music specifically as their own education and personal growth.
You know, this is really important. I mean, I come from the Garfield era of Clarence Acox. So I definitely understand like his influence and, what he brought to, jazz for the local community, but also internationally. I mean, that they've traveled, they've won all over the place. Absolutely. And I think you're so right when we talk about access. And even now, people in the community are like, Garfield isn't what it used to be. It's, our area has been gentrified. There was this whole push to bring in international students. So there's less of a presence of Black and Brown families at Garfield. But I love the fact that this came from a time where there was that presence and really there was a need to really diversify jazz in general. So tell us more about your role, because you are the community and family engagement director, right? So tell us a bit about how you're taking on that role and how you're being connected to bring these opportunities into the community.
Yeah, thanks. Great question. So I was brought into Jazz Ed about a year ago. And kind of as I mentioned, Jazz Ed was created specifically to reach those Black and Brown youth who, for whatever reason, variety of circumstances, economic, racial, institutional barriers, were not continuing into those higher level performance opportunities. And despite how much success Jazz Ed has had over the past 10 years, we are acutely aware of our own access barriers within our organization, which is true of any nonprofit. You can't solve all the problems in one day. So when I was brought on, Lori, our executive director, asked me if I would be willing to focus specifically on community engagement and building community partnerships to intentionally build that student pipeline that Jazz Ed was intended to reach, which is why the organization was created. So what I do specifically is manage the programs team to implement this community engagement strategy, specifically a place-based community engagement strategy that kind of flips traditional arts models on its head. And instead of asking students and families to do all the work, if they happen to hear about us, to fill out the registration form, bring their students to our facilities, so on and so forth, to quite literally mobilize our organization and to get us on the road and to get us out into the community and build intentional relationships with schools, community-based organizations, so on and so forth, to bring our programming into a space where those students and families already already feel seen and already feel valued and feel safe, and figure out a way to bring our programs to them without requiring any initial investment be made by our community partners. Because far too often these relationships are transactional. So I pitched the idea. I'm like, what if we just offered free community classes to these people as a way of reaching those students, as a way of reaching those families, and trust that like that work that we're doing now is going to naturally bring folks along over time, instead of trying to force students to fit into the program model that we had previously been operating off of.
That's a really specific strategy, Nicole. And I can only imagine that you are absolutely right in terms of its effectiveness over time. I mean, I'm always telling folks who are looking to be in community or listen to community, I'm like, when you become a part of community, it becomes, it's like, it's a no-brainer at that point, because really for many Black communities in particular, the need to build that trust is up front. Because in order for me to know that this is an institution that's going to take care of my child, take care of my scholar, I need to be sure that I can trust this institution, this organization. I can trust the individuals that are going to be having access to my child. All of those things are like upfront, and maybe for many communities, but I'm talking specifically about what I experience as a parent, as a mother, and also what I see with those families that I'm around oftentimes that are saying, look, you know, I didn't do that because I wasn't sure. The representative they sent was a little bit sketchy, or, you know, I've never seen them out in community. And, you know, I think it's very true with so many different industries. So I love that you guys have said, you know, instead of us being like, this is where we are, come, you're like, no, where is everybody else at? Where are the families already at? So we can connect and plug in with them. Absolutely. How do you feel that it's working in your year now, you know, after a year of really being able to begin to implement this strategy? How do you feel it's working for Jazz Ed?
I think it's been incredibly successful, and it's been a lot of work, and we're growing and we're learning in the process. What that actually looked like in practice, especially emerging from the pandemic where everybody's still trying to get their bearings, especially in the school and like after school context. What we heard loud and clear is like, yes, we want these opportunities for our students, for our scholars, but we can't like do the work of getting our students to you. We can't have an after school program because busing is an issue right now, or these parents are working and they can't come back and pick up their scholar late. So what we've been doing is starting the conversation in the beginning of last year, and we implemented a community kind of pop-up class curriculum at the start of this calendar year, so at the start of 2022. And what that looked like was us building strategic partnerships with a handful of schools and community-based organizations such as Mary's Place, Launch Seattle, Bailey Gatzer Elementary, to name a few. And we were just like getting in front of people. We were tabling at recess. We were doing ukulele after school clubs. We were doing Weebop. We were like trying all the things, you know, just to get the music in front of people, especially for those kids who wouldn't otherwise have access to those opportunities, just to see if it was a good fit. And it wasn't perfect, and it was a little bit bumpy. And we heard some feedback, and we were like, okay, we're going to shift. But going into this next year, we're going to have 4 satellite locations with Seattle Public Schools, in addition to Rainier Prep Middle School, in addition to 2 community partnerships with Launch and Mary's Place that we're going to continue to build out that curriculum to continue to bring more students and families in. So I'm really excited about the progress that we've made. I just hope that we can keep the momentum going.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you guys are off to a great start, Nicole, and that you have been an amazing addition to Jazz Ed. If somebody out there in the ethos, or anybody watching or listening, make sure you look right there in the camera. Let them know how they can plug in and be one of the families that are being serviced by Jazz Ed.
Yes. If you are a student in 4th through 12th grade, or if you have a student or a scholar in 4th through 12th grade and you're interested in exploring music education, whether you're a beginner or you've been playing for a long time, we have a seat for you, and we would love to have you join us. This fall, our academic programming starts the first week of October and will continue through June with various opportunities. And we have that sliding scale tuition policy. So families get to choose what they pay, no questions asked. And to find more information, you can go to www.seattlejazzed.org, or you can email us directly at programs@seattlejazzed.org, or you can call us at 206-324-5299.
Amazing resources. You came prepared, Nicole. I love it. You got it all in. You got it all in. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for your work out here in community to bring jazz to our families. It's necessary because we are the originators of jazz, right? And so the last thing we need to see is it not, you know, staying in our community. We need to keep a hold of that and really make sure that our scholars are excited about jazz. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.